And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another week, another edition here of the PondCast number 58. Your weekly dose, your weekly catch-up show here of all things StarCraft. It's been a very intense week of StarCraft as well, with all the 2v2 content going on, but there's also been other news as well. Let's get into it. Let's get into it here. Of course, I'm your host, IVIP. I'm joined by Kuro, handling the production side of things. As up first, we have our news topics. We have our interviews. Shout out to the SCHistorian. We already went through a handful of his interviews last week. He, of course, did go to Riyadh, did go to EWC, and he was able to get some interviews with some of the players competing there, of course. Last week, we went over his interviews with Clem and with Classic as well. They were both interviewed, of course. Before that, we were able to showcase his interview with Cyril, and here he did interview two people, Rogue and Lambo. Up first, we have Rogue. It was a very short interview with Rogue. That big shout out to Maddox. Maddox, of course, did help translate. He translated. He was there with the SCHistorian to make these interviews possible. So a big shout out to Maddox as always. And we did have some brief words. Again, very short. Typically, the Korean interviews were a little bit shorter. There was a little bit less of a back and forth. I will say that. And he was asked about his form coming back to StarCraft 2. It was interesting to hear from Rogue. He was asked how he felt about returning after military service, how he felt getting back into form, and whether or not he even believed that he could get it back into form. Rogue, he did elaborate, saying that he thought it was going to be easier. He was like, yeah, I was pretty confident that I was going to be able to get back into tip-top shape, but it was actually harder than I thought. And I would argue that he's still not quite there. Like, Rogue, he's still improving, he's still getting back up there. Good enough to be a part of EWC. True. Good enough to be there, but still kind of like regaining a lot of that lost form that he otherwise previously did have. So he's kind of like on that road. Likewise, he spoke about how he feels like his offline play was worse than his online play, that his practice play, so he feels like he has yet to really show off like what he's really made of and really show off like his top form. He's not quite there. Did say so himself, but he's working on it. Likewise, he also did emphasize that he assumed that this was going to be his last tournament. Of course, when it comes to EWC, when it comes to the future of StarCraft, it is something that is always brought up, and he wasn't too certain if there was going to be more StarCraft. He's still uncertain when it comes to future EWC action, but regardless, he was hopeful. He was told like, hey, there are these other tournaments being announced, like the tournament in Paris in France, the Maestros of StarCraft. We have some big announcements for that. We'll get there. With Home Story Cup, with the Fusion Esports League, and with other tournaments. Rogue was very thankful for those other tournaments kind of coming up, and definitely motivating him to continue to compete, to continue to improve. We'll see if that's the case. We're kind of entering that off-season period of StarCraft. EWC did conclude. We have some offline tournaments on the horizon, but again, it's on us to make sure we keep these tournaments going, that we have something for these players to compete for, of course, as well. I was also asked about, and this is then a question that's going to permeate to the other interview as well. I asked about the Korean scene, how he felt about it, how he felt about how, currently in the modern age of StarCraft, like Koreans have fallen by the wayside in terms of the top players in the world. And Rogue, he spoke about how like he feels like with good practice, with hard work, like Koreans can maybe catch back up again. In reference to players like Cyril, in reference to players like Clem. And he, of course, is a part of that as well. So, again, it was a very short interview, but again, I do give a shout out to the SCHistorian. Do recommend checking out his channel. There's a lot of content there, a lot of interviews, and I'm sure a lot more interviews to come. The SCHistorian, he often does travel to all of these tournaments, whether it's EWC, whether it's DreamHack. Unfortunately, he wasn't at Fusion Esports League, but maybe in a future tournament. And likewise, we'll see if he goes to the French events. It'll be really cool to see him travel to France and maybe be a part of that as well, and also provide us some content. I feel like interviews like this are few and far between nowadays. Back in the day, we used to have a little bit more dedicated content regarding that, whether it's, the Dank Shrine or the Dark Shrine, if you recall, with Toast, whether it's Fear Dragon, conducting interviews and providing content specifically around the NA player base as well. That's something that isn't really the case anymore, and I feel like there's definitely room for that. There's definitely room for that. And maybe when we are able to have a little bit more time on our schedule, maybe we'll step into that role as well. I think it's always something that we've thought about, never something that we really did kind of push towards, but maybe in the near future. It'd be fun. But regardless, that does conclude the Rogue interview. Again, relatively brief, just getting his thoughts here and there on a couple of things. That leads us into the Lambo interview, which was a lot more extensive. Comparing a 4-minute interview to a 24-minute interview. It's But again, it's easier to have like a back and forth discussion when you don't have a translator in between, right? So that's a big part of that as well, which is typically the case with a lot of these interviews. Is English interviews do typically go a little bit longer. Lambo had a lot to say, and the SCHistorian had a lot to ask as well. Lambo, of course, was also at EWC and was also provided this interview. So a big shout out to the SCHistorian for pulling this off. When it comes to what was asked of him, he was asked a little bit about the Cyclone bug, and this actually goes in line with what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago in regards to the upcoming balance patch, or the potential balance patch. We went over Pig's kind of his breakdown of his proposed balance changes, and a big part of what we were discussing was the fact that a lot of these changes, once they get refined, they can be turned into a mod. We spoke about how now like certain people can upload mods and have been making their own balance patch mods as well. We'll be getting into those tournaments, as we have Green Art making his patch. We have Patches making his patch as well. So again, a lot of people are making their own basically proposed balance patches. They're turning that into mods and people can play on them. What I'm getting at is that Lambo, he brought up something similar, talking about how in the future, if the Cyclone, if we get to a point where the Cyclone never gets fixed, never gets patched, regarding the Cyclone bug that is currently plaguing StarCraft, that's in the future, then now that we can upload balance patches, that maybe that can just be patched out, and tournaments will start just using that balance patch mod. Not the first time that has happened, by the way. Tournaments in the past, there have been Cyclone bugs, there have been Gas Geyser bugs that have had to have been fixed, added to a mod, and then we just play on that. There's an Observer Plus version of a Cyclone fix mod from like a year ago, which we used to use. So that's also a possibility as well, where the idea of, if we cannot patch the game, to just introduce mods which are with our own patches, and tournaments just use that moving forward. It's happened before, it can happen again. And we spoke about that in regards to Pig's proposed balance patches as well, where that could lead, or that could be the future of StarCraft. If need be, if it's in our hands, then I can definitely see a world where we create our own add-ons, our own mods to balance the game, to patch the game, and then we just use that instead for tournaments. Basically, I was referring to that last time in regards to testing balance patches and testing mods, and how there can definitely be an initiative and organization amongst all the tournament organizers to actually use the same balance patch mod to test it, to bring it to forefront, to force players to play on it in these online weeklies and in tournaments in general, to get as much testing, to get information, to get data, and then to refine from there on forward. Here, the idea of using that to quote-unquote fix the Cyclone, that's along those lines as well. So Lambo, he did bring that up. Likewise, spoke a little bit about his own upbringing, his own start into StarCraft 2. It was interesting to hear that he was more of a console gamer back in the day, like I'm sure many of us were. Playing on the N64, playing on the Xbox, playing games with friends, playing Call of Duty, playing Battlefield. Spoke about his own introduction to StarCraft way back when. And it was interesting. It was fun to hear. He spoke about how he never heard of esports before, never heard of StarCraft before, RTS. And he got introduced via a gaming magazine, apparently. How he was in the bathroom of his friend's house, and there was like a Game Insider, or there was like a gaming magazine of some kind, and he saw StarCraft on it. He's like, I'll try it out. And there you go. Bam. Then he started playing, and he never stopped. Never did stop. Lambo, he also spoke on something that I feel like is very commonly cited and very commonly documented, and something that we all know about Lambo, and that is his mindset. I feel like infamously, Lambo, he has some pretty poor mindset when it comes to his approach to things, and he kind of spoke about here as well. He alluded to it initially, talking about how he was asked, what are your, strongest and favorite memories in StarCraft? And he was like, all all my strong memories in StarCraft are when I lose. And it's like, that's Lambo. He's always very hard on himself, always very critical of himself. A little bit of I don't know if I would say he's a doomer, but like that's kind of how his mind approaches things, and that's always been one of his weak points, and he elaborates on that here as well, where confidence is something that he lacks. It's something that he did have at one point. He spoke about how during the COVID era of StarCraft, there was a period in time where he was doing quite well. He was getting really good results, and because that, he was feeling really confident and really positive moving forward. But that only lasted a short period of time. Afterwards, that's when he kind of went on a bit of a downswing, and that's when and he said himself that he hasn't been that confident ever since. It's been a couple of years. So that's definitely something that he's working on, and he knows that. Everyone knows that. It's kind of like a common thing with Lambo. He's really smart. He's really smart, really great guy. He spoke about, like, again, his biggest strength, or it's like how he plans a series and how he executes like builds and his overall strategy going in, but his mechanics are lacking, and he's aware of that. He spoke about how he has regrets about how he learned the game when he was younger. Like, he puts a lot of value in fundamentals and puts a lot of value in the foundation, which I would agree with as well. When it comes to learning the game, when it comes to not learning bad habits and focusing a lot on mechanics and focusing a lot on speed and just improving and focusing on that kind of aspect of your play early on, just because later in life and later in your career, it can be hard to like go back to basics and go back to that and try to work on that later on as you're already established. That's what he spoke about quite a bit here, talking about his own weaknesses and his own struggles and what other players, have, and that actually he went full circle with that, and he was even asked, hey, are there any young players that you have your eye on that you feel like have what it takes to grow even greater than what they are? And he name dropped a couple of people that we cast quite often, players like GG Machine. GG Machine is very young, and he spoke and he gave a lot of praise to his mechanics and his approach to the game. He spoke about Young Yakov, who's a little bit older, of course, than GG Machine, a little bit more established, but another player that's very much so on that grind set and improving a lot at the game and dedicated to the game. He spoke about Arcfire, and he spoke about Cristiano as well. Those are the four that he name dropped: Cristiano, Alcfire, Young Yakov, and GG Machine, as players who are on that grind, who dedicate a lot. And he himself said that he feels like they're very passionate about the game. They dedicate a lot of time to the game, and he feels like over time, like they're all they've all improved so much over the past year, and that's only gonna continue if they keep at it, of course. So he spoke on that. He spoke about Koreans. Something else that he mentioned as well is that he feels like that actually kind of lines up with what Rogue, with the Rogue interview a little bit. He was asked about Koreans and foreigners and their current disparity at the highest level and what he thinks, and he was also asked about returning to the game and improving at the game, and he spoke about how he feels like if you can get to a certain level, you can probably get back there with time, which of course helps with the Koreans returning from the military. But if we're like with Rogue being cited as an example, Rogue, Hero as well, Classic as well, Beyond as well, these players that were at a certain level went to the military, so they dipped down a little bit, but they were more or less able to get back up to that point, or working towards getting to that point, which is a little bit easier than starting new and starting fresh and trying to reach peaks of skill that you haven't gotten to before in the past, which is where he's at times had his own struggles. But he was asked about Koreans versus foreigners and basically like the discussion about like how Korean dominance was once a big part of StarCraft, now isn't. It actually reminds me about the discussion that the SCHistorian had with Fear Dragon, if you remember. They were talking about storylines and whether it's a positive or a negative thing, how foreigners versus Koreans used to be like a big exciting part about StarCraft. Nowadays a little bit less so, right? Before it used to be really exciting to see to get behind players like Scarlet or Stefano, or these big foreigners that could maybe threaten and excel and would beat Koreans at times. But now it's like more expected to see like Cyril do well, Clem do well. Like it's more expected that they would go through and like win these events, and now it's the opposite. Now it's like, oh, can the Koreans threaten them instead? It's an interesting dynamic, but it also means that it's, at least for some people, I think maybe myself included, it's a little bit less exciting for whatever reason. It's a little bit less exciting than it once was. So yeah, he was kind of asked about that and asked his thoughts on that as well, and he feels like and that's what led into the discussion of up and coming younger players. He actually. I'm glad that he brought this up. He spoke on some of the up-and-coming Europeans. He spoke on the up-and-coming Korean as well. I say Korean. Percival. He spoke on Percival. If you remember Percival, he retired for a time. He came back last year in November. We did report on that, of course. And he has been improving a lot over the past 8 months. It's been really surprising to see. If you remember, when he returned, he by no means ever intended to go full-time. I bring this up a lot during the cast, and I have done so over the past 8 months, about how Percival, when he came back, I asked him, and he was like, "Oh no, I'm just coming back for fun." Like after retiring, like he felt like he had peaked and he didn't maybe achieve the results that he wanted. Now he was just back more as a hobby than anything. But very quickly, like he started grinding hard, streaming and playing quite a lot. And I would say that right now he is better than he ever was before his retirement, before his hiatus, and before he stepped away from the game. Like right now he is looking really, really strong and really scary. And yeah, Lambo brought him up as well, how he's really surprised by the rate of improvement that Percival has had specifically this year, specifically over these past 8 months. It has been really cool to see, and he's another player to like keep an eye on. And I would agree, I would 100% agree, based on what we've seen, based on what we've casted. Percival, he is one definitely to keep an eye on, because he's been getting some better results as of late, like taking down some big names. Be really cool to see. Likewise, as they wrapped up, he was asked about the future of StarCraft. He was asked directly, about big tournaments falling by the wayside and how StarCraft would change in his opinion. He echoed, I think, what most people have been saying, what we've already stated as well here on the channel, about how there's probably going to be a lot of retirements. The scene is going to shrink, but it'll always be there, right? It'll always be there. Like there are all these big online tournaments that are happening. There are some offline events that are happening, like Cheeseadelphia, like Ozcraft, like Home Story Cup, where there's still going to be these events that are maybe a little bit, they may be smaller than EWC, but they're still going to be there, and players are still going to compete in them as well, more as a hobby than anything, where most likely all these players are going to be supplementing their income by focusing on another part of their life, focusing on their IRL career, maybe streaming, maybe making content, again, just doing things in other areas, supplementing their otherwise income from competing, from esports, from playing in StarCraft. But they'll still be around. And again, Lambo, I'm sure, is going to be one of them as well. I mean, I'm sure it also helps that Home Story Cup is in Germany, so I'm sure moving forward we're always going to see players like Lambo, Showtime, Gabe as well, always there and around for Home Story Cup, and of course other events around it as well. But yeah, it was a much longer interview, and they definitely touched on a lot more things than we went through here. But it was really cool to hear from Lambo. It was really cool to hear from the SCHistorian as well, for sure. I don't know how many more interviews are going to be coming out from EWC from Riyadh. This was only posted a couple of days ago, so most likely we're going to be seeing some more. How many? Hard to say, but definitely going to be more coming up. So do check out the SCHistorian. Check him out over on YouTube. Check him out on Twitter as well. Again, a lot of content, whether it's these interviews from Riyadh, he's posted many more interviews from DreamHack, from I Am Katowice as well, from tournaments past, and I'm sure for more tournaments in the future as well. He'll be there for the content, baby, for the content. It's gonna be good, gonna be solid. Meanwhile, we have our next bit of news here. We have Nightmare. Now, again, if you've been watching StarCraft for the past week, you would know that Nightmare, he's back. He's back. He did retire at around the start of the year, or I say start of the year, a couple of months ago, maybe 3-4 months ago at this point. Nightmare did retire to focus on what? Focus on Deadlock. He was competing in Deadlock, competing for Pulsar Esports. It was announced this week that he did leave, last week, that he did leave Pulsar Esports. He did step away, and I believe, is no longer competing in Deadlock. We don't know the details as to what occurred between the two parties, but he did retire, and because of that, he started competing again in StarCraft. We saw him in the Wardy TV Summer Qualifiers. We saw him in some of the online weeklies. We're going to be going over those results, by the way, for those tournaments. But Nightmare, he did start his return, and he was looking pretty good. He was also in the RSL Qualifiers. That was it. It was in the RSL qualifiers as well. So it was really cool to see his return, and I'm really curious to see what his level is at and how he compares to everyone else, and more importantly, is he only back just because, he was nostalgic and just because he stopped competing in Deadlock and he wanted to, try StarCraft again? Is he back temporarily or is he back permanently? That it's hard to really say. It's hard to say. As time goes on, then we can expect to see more and more of Nightmare. But for the time being, like he's back. It's really cool to see him back. Whether he sticks around or not, that we can't say for certain. But a lot of the results that we're going to be going over this week in the podcast are going to be featuring Nightmare. So don't be surprised to see him in the results in those brackets, because hey, he's back and he did compete quite a bit this week. Quite a bit. So there's a lot to get into in regards to his current form, in regards to what Nightmare is currently looking at. Meanwhile, that leads us into the TLMC. TLMC 21 has been announced. Now, don't get this confused with the current Team Liquid map contest that is active for team games. That is another TLMC that is currently active. I believe that voting has been wrapped up for that. I'm not entirely certain. But obviously, we still have yet to enter voting process for that. So that is for the Team TLMC number 5. That is still ongoing. But now we have another TLMC that's going to be coming in for the 1v1 ladder map pool. So again, there are two separate TLMCs. One is for team games, the other is for 1v1. So there's two Team Liquid map contests that are currently ongoing. This one has just been announced, and we saw that Wax did clarify a couple of things. He did mention that the goal, the hope right now, is to update the team game map pool and the 1v1 map pool at the same time. It's going to be happening at the same time or around the same time. His goal is for late November. So late November is going to be around the time when we expect to have a new map pool. It's still a couple of months away, but we do need time to vote, to filter through all these maps, to go through those to go through all the submissions, then to filter through, then to vote, and then to have our selection done. So we do have a couple of months here in the lead up to November to refine and to have our new map pools for 1v1 and for team games as well. So we do have like a more or less like a quote unquote deadline for that sort of thing. For those that are curious, those working with the TLMC, they already have connections with Blizzard, with Activision Blizzard, or with Microsoft, I guess, with the developers, to update the ladder map pool to make that happen. It already happened, right? It already happened with the previous 1v1 map pool, so we already have that process that works. We already have that process. We already have that kind of line of connection, the line of communication, and that's something that we expect to not be an issue moving forward, to be a regular thing. I know that at the start of the year, a lot of people were a little bit concerned when ESL stepped away that there'd be issues with this, but I would say that there's no need to be concerned about that. Like, this is something that is happening. Like, this is when it comes to the map pool rotations, is something that we should be expecting. Now, this is separate from balance patches. That's a little bit different when it comes to trying to piece it all together. But that's also why we spoke about how important it is about the initiative that Pig started in regards to starting the discussion and coming together as a community as to what we want to push forward in regards to the direction of the game and the proposed balance patch that would be coming up in the future. And also why it's important that we go through that testing process ourselves, and we go through the iteration ourselves, and go through all of that to the point where we can finally bring something to the table to approach with Blizzard to push through, I should say. Regardless, the process was already there for the TLMC. The submission phase is opened up on the 11th of August, and it closes September 8th. The judging phase, which is kind of like that filtering process, is going to be September 8th to the September 22nd, and then voting will begin late September, mid-November. So you have a bit of an idea of again, the road moving forward with our dates and with when your vote matters most as well. Again, the voting is going to be around late September, mid-October. That's when you step in. And even before that, a lot of community figures are going to be testing and judging the process as well. The submitted maps, I should say. So big shout out to TLMC, big shout out to Wax for conducting all of this, for organizing all of this, and for pushing this through. Likewise, a big shout out to Monster Energy as well. He also gave the shout out where Monster Energy, they actually sponsor this. They sponsor this, and because that they're able to have a prize pool and able to pay the map makers for their time for their investment into actually making all these maps as well. So really cool to see. Much love. And hey, if you're out there, and if you happen to be a map maker, or if you want to dip your toes into making maps yourself, then go right ahead. Again, you have until September 8th to submit your map. So best of luck. Best of luck with your submitted maps. So, and again, a big shout out to Wax, big shout out to all those working behind the scenes at TLMC. Meanwhile, that leads us into the Maestros of the game. This is the, of course, aforementioned events happening in France. There is a big LAN event that is occurring. It was announced previously, and now over the past week, we have had day after day after day of announced invited players. First, we have Rainer. Rainer, he is confirmed. He is announced to be invited to the Maestros of the game, so he is there. He's going to be confirmed, bearing in mind that there is an online portion and then an offline portion. So this is an event that's happening in France. That is true. Also in France, that is true. But again, there's going to be the online portion first, and then once we get in towards the playoffs, then that's when we have the offline portion. So these aren't confirmed players for the offline event. These are confirmed players for the event itself. So Rainer's going to be competing. Likewise, we have confirmation that Classic is also going to be competing as well. The Korean Protoss player. We also have Solar stepping in as the Korean Zerg player, also announced. We have Serral, of course, the current reigning world champion, is going to be competing, is going to be part of the event. And we have a Clem. Clem, of course, is also going to be a part of the tournament. The previous reigning world champion. And last but not least, Hero as well. I just realized I don't know if we went through the same order on stream, but Hero, he's also going to be confirmed for the event. So we have all the top players that you'd expect, to be honest. For Zerg, we have Solar, Serral, Rainer. For Protoss, we got Hero and Classic. For Terran, we have Clem. So again, we got the best of the best. All have been invited, all are going to be competing, and I believe we will still have some more to come. I believe we still have some more. Of course, I forgot that last week we confirmed that Mara and Beyond were going to be there as well. They were the first two to be announced. So we got plenty of Terran, Protoss, and Zerg representation. I believe we're still going through announcements. The previous announcement was yesterday. Serral, he was announced yesterday. So most likely we're going to be getting another announcement today, and then thereafter for other players. Who do you want to see at the Maestros of the game? That's a good question here. We're missing a couple of the top players. We'll see if they get invited. I'm thinking of players like Rogue, Shin, Cure, Gumiho.
I will say that on the Wikipedia page it says that there are 8 invited players and invited to group stage, and then 16 players invited to preliminary stage. So those are invite for group stage, and if that may be the final count for the group stage itself.
Yeah, so as you said, there are going to be some invited players for the preliminary stage. I would imagine they're going to be announcing those invited players as well. So we'll see. We'll see who gets invited. We'll see who's able to be a part of the tournament. Oh boy. So yeah, really cool to hear. Really cool to hear in regards to Maestros of the game. And I'm hoping that it does well, because, I mean, I say that. I should also bring it back a little bit here and remind everyone that there is, I believe, crowdfunding that I'm going to double check here if it's still ongoing. But if so, don't forget to support. Don't forget to pledge. I have to translate from French. No. It's all in French. Yes, 3 days. So 3 days remaining.
Website, and there's a language setting.
3 days remaining here for the remainder of the crowdfunding. So if you're out there, if you want to support StarCraft, if you want to support Maestros of the game, which is a big event happening in France. Again, there's the online portion and then the offline playoffs. Then you can do so for the next 3 days. 3 days left. 3 days left for contributing for funding. And again, there are also like different tiers, different pledges. You get different benefits as well. You know, there's definitely merchandise that you can achieve. I mean, the event is already funded, so anything extra here can help reach them, or can help them reach that next goal. So again, do check it out. Do consider supporting. Do consider. Much love to the passionate people over in France, and to Comeback TV, of course, for organizing the event. Big shout out. Speaking of offline events, this is an event that we already announced. Was it last week or the week? I think it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we did speak on this, but the SC2 Safe House is now officially announced on social media. It was announced previously by Zombregub in Fear Dragon's Twitch channel, if you recall, which we already spoke on. But yes, now we have confirmed dates of October 18th and 19th. Bearing in mind that this is an event that's happening in the Americas, that the tournament itself is online, but the casters are going to be offline. Just like previously last year, they rented an Airbnb. They got together Steadfast, Chicken Man, Zombregub, Fear Dragon. I want to say that Nathanius was there. I know that Zergo was there, and some others. They were all there. They were able to cast together. They would have I think they had poker nights. They had like drinking games. Like they had all these other like events planned. Or they had all this other like out of game stuff planned and organized. I think they had like a spicy wing challenge or something. And yeah, they were able to make that happen last year. Now we're back, and the goal here is to turn this into an annual event. Not just that, but as the event grows, because it's still in its infancy, still only year 1. Now we're coming into year 2. The goal would be for the crowdfunding and for the support to get large enough to be able to actually, you know, bring players, to be able to fly players over and have them come together. It's a little bit different compared to Home Story Cup. For Home Story Cup, the international representation is typically very small because of how expensive it is to get flights. I think an example of that, hold on, did they fly in, was it 2 Koreans? No, it was Lunacy, Xian, and Ryung, if I'm not mistaken. Go and check for Home Story Cup. It was Ryung, Xian, Lunacy, and SOS, right? That's the other one. I forgot about SOS. But for example, Home Story Cup 27 had 4 Koreans, right? There were 4 essentially international players. And I believe Streamer Zone paid for Lunacy and SOS to fly there, by the way. Like, sorry, SOS. Lunacy, he joined Streamer Zone after that. True. But like, there was definitely like a little bit of support from the teams to actually allow the players to get there. Ryung and Xian obviously getting some team vitality support as well. So that helped alleviate some of those costs. You know, only having 4 international players, having players come in from around Europe is a lot cheaper, whether it's flights, whether it's other forms of travel as well, depending on where they are in Europe. And they can, of course, supplement players from the local scene, the local talent, with German players. Jumi, Moja, Hero Marine, Hero Marine, Showtime, Lambo, Battle B, that's it. Battle B, he wasn't there this time, but you know, potential Battle B as well. Like, there's a lot of like local talent, and again, it's very cheap to kind of fill out that roster. For the Americas, for the SC2 Safe House, for a quote-unquote American Home Story Cup, it's very different. One, because a lot of the American players are retired, right? Like, a lot of them are retired, a lot of them have stepped away. It's a very large country, and the reality is that currently, in the current state of StarCraft, a lot of the big players are international. A lot of them are not on the continent of the US of A, right? They're not on the Americas. They're over in Europe. They're over in South Korea. They're in other parts of the world. So much more expensive to bring them over. So hosting an NA Home Story Cup in the current setting of StarCraft is much more expensive, much more difficult to pull off. So best of luck to Zombregub. And hey, it's difficult, but not impossible. So if you're out there, if you want to support StarCraft, if you have, I know that there's a lot of crowdfunding going on. That's a discussion to be had as well. There's a lot of crowdfunding. We do crowdfunding with our Patreons, with our weekly tournaments. There's a KSL doing their crowdfunding. We have Home Story Cup with their crowdfunding, the French tournaments, this tournament as well. I know. There's Euthermal, he did crowdfunding for his tournaments. Wardy does crowdfunding for his events. So that is true, but again, if you want to support the NA region, the NA scene, then you can do so via the Matcherino. There is a Matcherino page here that Zombregub has posted for Safe House number 2. And again, the goal is to have this event grow further, grow larger, get a lot of viewers, ideally get some sponsors as well to be able to make this a regular event and to be able to actually have an offline portion as well. I would say that, like, right now, the closest thing to NA Home Story Cup is Cheesedelphia. I would say that. I would say that Cheesedelphia, especially because it's open to the public, especially because a lot of players, a lot of local talent does arrive as well. I would say that arguably you could make an argument that it's more important to support Cheesedelphia because it's already an established event. I would say support both, of course, but my hope is that they're able to support each other, right? It's like for the previous Cheesedelphia, we had a lot of local players and local talent as well go to the event. It was really cool to see Tempo was there, Dave Testa was there, alongside some others. I want to say Uka even showed up. Uka was there, Berry Crunch, Juggernaut Jason, ex-Kawaiian, and some of these others that weren't even competing, by the way, but they were there. And I would love to see Sunbergup, show up and help support. Nathanius, the Zerg Girls, Steadfast, Chicken Man. It would be nice if there was a little bit more unification. They could support each other, maybe make something happen and work together. That would be my hope. But these are like the two big events happening in the Americas nowadays. It's Cheesedelphia and now the S2 Safe House as well. But again, it is going to be over in Vegas. I imagine once again they're going to be renting an Airbnb. I don't think we have confirmation exactly as to who is going to be there. Again, we know who was there last time. We can make the assumption that the same, and maybe a couple more are going to be there this time. Whether it's Dave Testa and some of these other guys, I would hope so. Hope they have a great time there, and I wish them the best when it comes to the growth of their event and the growth of NA StarCraft. Do hope. And when it comes to the event that you expect, when it comes to the players involved, even though the event was online, they did focus on players from North America and Latino America as well. So we had players like Cham and Eggs. We had players like Estrella and Trigger. So those are the kind of players that you would expect to see competing in the tournament itself, just because, again, it is NA focused. Or it is America's focus. I say America just because, including Latino America as well, not just North America. So that is the goal. That is their initiative. And again, wish them the best. Wish them the best of luck. Also, a big shout out to Luis GG in the chat. Baby God. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for raiding with a party of 22. Gracias, baby. Gracias. Thank you so much for the support. We appreciate it. Do appreciate it. That leads us into our next bit of news. That leads us into the StarCraft 2 Collegiate World Championship. This is an interesting event just because it's not your typical collegiate league that was run in the past. I believe there are open signups, quote-unquote open signups. Basically, this is limited. This is limited to players that are actually conducting studies. They're actually conducting studies that are actually in university, in college, going through that process. These are the players that are eligible to compete. I'm sure they have their own kind of registration form to fill out to prove that you're actually, they're actually studying, they're actually, in a university, going to university and going through that study process. And then you are eligible for the tournament itself. Speaking of, I was curious who had signed up because the signups are pretty big here. Any big notables? I see Sig, true. I see Sig there. Inexorable is there. Let's go. Sebestes is there. UED Soldier. Who else? I noticed Azura. Hacker is top. Lorimbo. Lorimbo. Ay. Lorimbo is there. Do love to see it. And Xingming. Fiance is there as well. Yeah, a couple of notables. Are there for sure. So it's going to be quite a competitive tournament. And I wish them the best. Wish them the best of luck. It's going to be amazing to see them all competing, facing off against each other with a pretty massive prize pool as well. $1,000 prize pool. Let's go. Big shout out to Allison LT for organizing, for running the event. So if you're out there, if you have to be kind of your studies, you have to be in school, then consider going for it. Consider signing up. Consider competing amongst all your other fellow students. Let's go. Let us go. With that, we are going to be wrapping up our news portion, our news segment here of the show. Again, there's a lot of tournaments to get into. I did allude to it earlier, how a lot of there's been a lot of mods floating around with proposed balance changes already on those mods. We do have some tournaments coming in regarding that. We have the StarCraft Evolution League that is around the corner. The championship, I should say, is right around the corner. And we have some SCL events to go over. Likewise, the Thermals 2v2 tournaments. The group stage did conclude this week. And the playoffs are going to be next week as well. So again, it is in full swing. We'll be getting into all those tournament results after the break. See you soon.